So hello and welcome to another episode of Interviews with Experts. I'm Frederick Dunn and this is The Way to Be. Today we're touching on several insect species including wasps, honeybees, and we'll address some common misconceptions. My guests are Kate Anton, who is the Grozinger Laboratory manager and beekeeper. Kate manages colonies for research focused on ecology, nutrition, landscape, bee health, and genomics with a special interest in social insects. And Dr. Michael Skvarla. Michael is an assistant research professor of Arthro-Pod identification in the Department of Entomology at Penn State University. His current research is focused on Deer Keds. Read more in the video description below. Here's Kate and Michael. So I want to thank everyone for being here today, and my guests are Kate Anton and Mike Skvarla. And I'd like you both to start off, please, just by introducing yourselves, who you are, where you are, and what you do, starting with Kate.
Hi, my name is Kate Anton. I'm the lab manager and beekeeper for the Grozinger Lab. And I also work with Dr. Robyn Underwood, and together we give advanced beekeeping education programs through Extension. One of my specialties is honeybee reproduction. I rear a lot of queens. I breed bees for research. In the Grozinger Lab, we study a lot of things about ecology, landscape, but also genomics, and that requires honeybee breeding. So I developed a skill set there that's been very helpful to a lot of the goals of many advanced beekeepers, particularly in the Northeast. I also am a lover of other social insects, including wasps and ants.
That's fantastic. So welcome. And Michael?
Sure. My name is Michael Skvarla. I'm an assistant research professor at Penn State, and I run the insect identification lab here. So I get identification requests from mostly folks in Pennsylvania, but also throughout the Northeast. And really, I've gotten at this point requests from every continent in the world. And when people send me insects, photos and emails or specimens in the mail, I identify the insect or other arthropod for them. If it's a pest, I let them know how to control it if control is necessary. I dabble in a little bit of research, primarily with medical and veterinary entomology, but because I'm dealing with all kinds of different things from the public, from bed bugs to wasps to ants to, spiders, anything you could think of, I kind of dabble in a whole lot of different things, including wasps and bees.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's all going to tie in. I can suggest something that somebody probably sent to you that has it never happened, I'm sure, but they send you a picture of Vespa for bro and say, murder hornet.
Yes, all the time.
If actually, I had a nickel.
Yeah. So there's a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings out there. So today, and boy, everything we're talking about, these are broad in scope. I think it's great that you're into arachnids as well, because I love those too. The bold jumping spider in particular, beekeepers are familiar because every colony seems to have a resident bold jumping spider. That's not what we're here to talk about today. We're going to talk about something that's going to be putting pressure on a lot of beekeepers' apiaries and their bees, and it's the yellow jacket. And there are a lot of misunderstandings. If anyone's ever posted a short video or photo about a yellow jacket, there are a lot of ideas about what they are and what they aren't. One of the first things I'd like to talk about is we're here in the northeastern United States, the state of Pennsylvania. So for those who are watching this, some of the information may be regional. And yellow jackets do not identify just one subspecies, right? So who would like to take the handle on introducing the yellow jacket? Okay, Mike.
Sure. So we've got about 10 species of yellow jackets here in Pennsylvania. Within North America, we're actually one of the hot spots for yellow jacket diversity, like of all things. And yeah, we've got a number of species. We've actually got a couple different major groups of yellow jackets here, different species groups. And that can be important because species in the different species groups have somewhat different biologies. So one of these species groups that make small nests with low numbers of workers, maybe a few hundred, and the nests die out by the end of August. they're not usually pests because they're not very numerous. They're primarily predators, so they're not going after things like carbohydrates. The other species group make the big nests that, you run over with your lawnmower and they come out and sting you because there's 3,000 wasps in a nest. They're the ones that go after protein and carbohydrates in the fall, so they're pests at your picnic or your garbage can. Those are all within the genus Vespula. There's another genus, Dolichovispula, which contains bald-faced hornets, which many people are aware of. But another species called aerial yellow jackets, Dolichovispula arenaria, they look like other yellow jackets. They don't look like bald-faced hornets that are black and white. They're the typical, small size, black and yellow body coloration. But whereas most other yellow jackets are nesting in the ground or in things that are like the ground, inside a wall, inside under your siding, a place that mimics like a pre-existing cavity in the ground. Aerial yellow jackets are making exposed aerial nests like their bald-faced hornet cousins in the same genus. So yeah, we've got a lot of them, surprisingly, and they're kind of doing slightly different natural history behavior type things.
And this time, oh, go ahead, Kate.
I can tell you where quite a number of those nests are near my field lab.
Which one are we talking, in ground or the ones that are on the trees?
They're living in I can never get this right, soffit or fascia.
The soffit is the overhang. Yeah.
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 Yeah, in several buildings near my bee lab.
Okay. And this is an important topic because this time of year, people magically say, oh, this nest appeared overnight. I've been walking this way every day and I look up and I've got a bald-faced hornets, first of all, not true hornets. So it's interesting that we can talk on that too. And then the yellow jackets, their paper nests hanging from a tree can look very similar. Is there a way to safely look at that hanging nest on a tree and know that it's, first of all, are bald-faced hornets in the yellow jacket family? Are they related? They are considered yellow jackets?
They are considered yellow jackets,
Okay.
though the black and white
thing.
does make the name confusing.
Okay, yeah. And they have nicknames, bullet hornet, bull hornet, and people quickly understand why they get that name. So I'm going to tie this in because skunks around where I am eat these yellow jackets. So they'll dig the ones out of the ground, which is one of the reasons I like skunks. They also predate on honeybees by scratching the landing boards and things like that. But I still call them paper wasps, but is it right to call a yellow jacket a paper wasp because they use cellulose to construct their nest, but that's a different species, right?
So paper wasps are a different group entirely. They're in the genus Polistes. They make the kind of open umbrella nests that aren't enclosed by a paper sheath, similar to bald-faced hornets. All of these social wasps, Dolichovispula, the bald-faced hornets and aerial yellow jackets, Vespula, the yellow jackets, Vespa, the true hornets, and then Polistes, the paper wasps, all of them are in the family Vespidae. So they're all related, but some of them are in different subfamilies, different genera. So, they're more related to each other than they are, say, other wasps, but there's some differences there.
Okay. So they do use cellulose, they're just not called a paper wasp. Again, so like that's my bald-faced hornet nest back there. They're just my friends, so they hang out with me in here. So they died. Anyway, a nest blew out of the tree of yellow jackets. It was predated upon by a skunk, pulled it apart, scattered everything everywhere. So just for an experiment, I gathered them together, put it in a suet feeder and hung that on a tree, all the bits and parts. I think I have the queen there too. So we're going to get into the kind of the biology at the end of the year, what's going on with these yellow jackets. Beekeepers want to kill them. I don't think we need to. We have ways that hopefully we can get into with Kate here about beekeepers and what they can do to protect the colony or help them defend themselves from the yellow jackets. But my questions are about the biology of the yellow jacket. If I've got the queen and everything, we're late in the year. We're September at the time that we're making this video. So even though there are a lot of foragers on the nest, they reconstructed it. I think there's probably a queen, but if she lays an egg, how long does it take for that egg to go through all of its phases and come out as an adult, Michael? On
Uh,
a, yeah.
Let me look. I don't
Oh,
know.
good.
Wasn't
So
expecting that.
You weren't
these,
expecting that question. Okay.
these
Kate, do you
other
know?
social wasps and other bees,
Yeah,
they're not going to behave in the same way as honeybees, because of course honeybees are master regulators of their environment.
right,
So we expect workers to take exactly 21 days to emerge, right? But
right.
that's
Yeah.
because the honeybee colony is keeping their nest at perfect temperature and humidity.
Hmm.
So you're not going to find the same thing in organisms that have a different lifestyle. So in the ground, they're going to be subject to a bit more temperature changes and cooler temperatures. And I would think that by moving them to an aerial nest, you may have
Oh,
chi-
those are not in the ground yellow jackets. They were actually a nest
oh,
on a tree branch. A storm came through, knocked it down. Skunks ate it, tore it apart. So we put it right next to the same branch. So
right.
some people are following along. We've been showing weekly video updates of that nest. So they were actually tree on a tree branch. They were those yellow jackets.
But we'll see when Michael brings the jury. But I think them being aerial and exposed, there would be variation in the time of development based on
Yeah.
the temperature.
Yeah. And I did do thermal scans. They don't warm their nest, just as Kate described, the way honeybees do. And it seems like I can just tell when the workers are about to fly out because their thoraxes heat up. And then those little dots go out. They're not heating their eggs or larvae at all. So this is very interesting to me and leads me to, what'd you find, Michael?
I looked it variable numbers. So one source said 20 days for the egg to hatch. Another said about 30 days for the larvae to develop into an adult. Another gave 18 to 20 days for larvae to go from larva to adult. So seems like it's a little bit all over the place. Given that there's some diversity here, it may vary as well by species. So, but you're looking anywhere, my guess would be 20 to 30 days.
Okay. So then my next question to that is, so if we have egg to adult 30 days, let's say, uh, what's the lifespan of an adult in the nest?
Probably a couple of weeks to maybe a month.
So we're going to have a colony. The queen lives longer, so she'll be there. So we'll have a nest that just has at some point nothing but pupae, right? And no attending foragers at all, right? Because they wouldn't live long enough to be present while the larvae finish out their development, right?
Maybe. I'd be interested to see.
Oh, we're going to see because I'm doing the video. That's why we're here.
Ha!
Right. We're going to show that, and I think I'm going to have a nest that I can just pick up. It's only going to have the queen in it. What's the life expectancy of the queen? The whole season, right?
Whole season.
Okay. So, oh, go ahead.
Oh no, the one neat thing though is if you only had workers, if the queen's dead, but the workers are still there, they're like honeybees, they're sterile or they're unmated. But they can still lay sterile eggs or damn it. They can lay unfertilized eggs and those will
Okay.
develop into males.
So they make haploid. They're
Yeah,
haploidal.
yep, they're
Okay.
haplodiploid. And so even if the queen's gone, because she's not there to exert control over the nest, they'll start laying eggs. So you could still get larval to adult development with new wasps. They'll just all be males and they won't be able to do
Now,
anything.
will the males be able to do anything to help with?
No, they
No,
don't
they're
do
just
anything but loaf around until it's time to mate.
so they're like honeybees in that regard, right, Kate? Okay, so we have now it's natural for them to produce drones at the end of the year because they have to mate with the queens that are going to go out that are going to overwinter. So they feed on soft body insects. So let's hit on the benefits of having yellow jacket wasps before we hit on the negative aspect, which is they can take out a honeybee colony. So let's talk about the benefits. Who wants to go first?
The
Okay,
yellow
Michael.
jacket. Oh, sorry.
The yellow jacket, benefits of the
You-
yellow jacket.
I actually
Go
like
ahead,
yellow
Michael.
jackets. Sorry.
No.
Yep.
I actually like yellow jackets, at least some of them. So I mentioned there's a couple different species groups that we have in Pennsylvania. Um, Species in the Rufa species group, they're the ones that make the small nests that are die out typically by the end of August, early September. So they're about done by now. They're strictly predatory on other insects. They only go out, they're primarily going after things like caterpillars. They'll also hit other soft-bodied insects. Paper wasps are the same way. They're caterpillar specialists.
Mhm.
And so they're great biocontrol if you've got a nest that is in an area where you're not going to disturb it and make them come out and sting you.
Mhm.
If you've got, say, a paper wasp nest up in your eaves, but it's 2 stories up, I wouldn't bother getting on a ladder to go deal with it. I would let it, let those wasps kill all the caterpillars around my property. Same with these Rufus species group yellow jackets. They're strictly predatory. They're doing biocontrol in the area. Um, the problem is with the other species group, the Vulgaris species group. They're the ones that get big at the end of the fall, 3 to 5,000 workers. They switch from being strictly predatory earlier in the summer to scavenging this time of year. And they also start picking up more carbohydrates to feed the developing queens and males. And so the nests are bigger. They're switching to things that bring them into contact with people, like scrap food, like garbage cans, like pop and soda, you know. Um, and so there's multiple reasons that they're now coming into more contact with people compared to earlier in the year when they're strictly predatory, then going after insects and not really bothering you, and also having that smaller nest size that is more difficult to kind of disturb.
Mhm.
So they're great to have around part of the year.
Yeah. So, Kate, did you have anything to add?
Well, I think that there's really a missed opportunity in observing these yellow jackets and their behavior. We at my house, my husband and I, find them really interesting. And I feel like we have this culture of they're scary, they're bad, but I'm not sure there's that much truth to it for the most part, assuming you're not running your lawnmower over their nest.
Mhm.
Uh, so what we do is when we find the nest, I usually put like a branch, a thin branch in it as a flag so that the mower stays away from it. But we enjoy going down to the garden and checking on our yellow jackets. Um, it's really interesting what they do, and as long as you're gentle, you can get very close and observe them.
Mhm.
So it's really fun to see what they're doing. And sadly, when we get flooding rains, they get taken out sometimes. So, I've observed so many things in my garden that, we do all this research in the lab,
Mhm.
right? But when I'm out there observing it myself, I feel like I get so much better insight into the behavior of these animals and the other paper wasps. I have yet to do this, but apparently you can set colored construction paper out, and sometimes
Yeah.
they'll take it and
Yeah.
integrate it into their nests. And if that is not keeping up with the Joneses, I don't know what is. But yeah, I think it's a great thing about them. They can disprove this bias we have that they're
Mhm.
out to get us, and we can learn
Yeah.
so much about their behavior. Wasps have great facial recognition of each other, so they know
Sure.
their nest mates. Nest.
Right. And they did those tests where they changed the markings on their faces and got their nestmates rejected just from the visual change. That's very interesting. Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought that up. So that's interesting. So we're telling people to put out yellow and red construction paper and let them harvest that instead of your unfinished wood fence and see what you get.
Yeah,
They recycle their own cellulose too, because the ones I piled into that cage, they reused a bunch of it. What I want to hear from Michael is through observation, often we get invested in the species that we're looking at, that we're studying. Give an example of when you were invested in one and then very disappointed to see it go at the end of the year, or maybe something happened to it. Maybe some predator took it out. Do you have a story to share?
No, sorry, no, not like that. usually when I leave paper wasps and other yellow jackets, I've got young kids and dogs, so
Yeah.
I am perhaps a little more liberal than Kate is about taking out nests when they occur. So I'll leave paper wasps where I'm not going to disturb them. So up high, I
Okay.
can't really watch them though. But
Yeah.
like this year, we had three of them on our pool, and I knocked them down because the risk of the kids being stung as they came in and out was much, much higher. Um,
Okay.
so I've never really left them in a place where I could observe them up close because, if I was single or just me and my wife, maybe I would, but there's too many risk factors with
Okay.
the things around that would get stung. So
Okay. So I try to say high in a tree, let them be. But of course, if they're in a pathway or something, Kate, do you have a story where you became attached and you're,
Always. I
yeah,
mean,
let's,
and I just there's too many stories to pick from. There's a lot of drama, and sometimes we've seen yellow jackets assaulting bald-faced hornet nests. They're like tiny, small ones. We've seen a lot of sagas go on, which we love the bald-faced
now
hornets.
what are they taking away from the bald-faced hornet
I
nest?
think they're killing their brood, eating their
They're taking the
brood.
larvae because it would
Yeah,
be the soft-bodied ones that they'd be after. Do
yeah.
they ever really predate upon adult wasps?
I don't know. I did not see that. So
Okay.
maybe I should just switch careers right now.
Well, just start staring, and always ABC, always bring your camera. You need to document these things.
But we
'Cause-
just lost a yellow ground nest earlier this year from some we had really, really heavy rainfall, and it was very near where we had a nest last year, but we also had a bumblebee nest in a similar area, and the same thing happened. The bumblebees got killed by, we had the 2, 3 inches of rain situation, and I felt so sad. And it kind of made me wonder, is, these climate changes that we're having with more e- epic rainfall events going to be negatively impacting ground nesting insects and probably other animals.
Mhm, mhm. Now, Michael, do you have any sense of the populations declining? Are we losing species? Are they kind of status quo? What's been the impact that you're aware of?
sure. So this actually came up a couple of years ago. If people recall, back in 2020, we had the quote unquote murder hornet scare during the pandemic, and my lab got absolutely flooded with uh, identification requests of European hornets, which occur in Pennsylvania. They've been here since the 1850s or so. Everybody saw those, was convinced that they were seeing them for the first time, even though they've been here for 150 years. And I got, oh God, probably 1,000 ID requests of European hornets that year. And a lot of people asked, like, I'm seeing more of these, or I'm seeing them for the first time. So I reached out to the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture to ask, what kind of information they have, and they run trap nests in survey traps
Mhm.
in ports of entry and other high risk areas like lumber mills, trying to catch invasive species that as they come in. But one kind of side benefit of that is they have, this survey data for wasps and hornets going back a bunch of years, and they see no change. There's been no change in their trapping data for the last 20 years.
Mhm.
People are seeing these wasps more because they're just more aware of them.
Okay.
The murder hornet thing really scared people. Um, and it feels like a broader societal acknowledgement that wasps are around and people paying attention to them. So, but as far as hard data goes, no, there seems to be no change, at least
Mhm.
for the wasps that the Department of Agriculture is monitoring.
Okay, Kate, you had something?
I I do think there has been a change, and it was COVID that made people spend more time at home And then there was a sensational news article, and I think people just became more aware of these things when they had a little bit more time to spend with their environment. That's my pet philosophy on why the European hornets became noticed at a much greater rate.
Okay. I think you're right. Yeah. And I got attached to Vespa Bro in the spring because she started making her nest in our pavilion up by the pond, and I did time lapses that lasted for weeks. So I have all the nest construction and everything going on, everything she did, thermals, everything. And then she just flew out one day. And normally when she flew out is when I went up and got close up macro images of all of her development. And then she just didn't come back. So
Oh,
that's
must
just
have got predated or something.
what a huge waste of time that was. So all that data. Now, well, of course, I should probably just show it anyway. And then one day they can fly away and we have nothing. So, but I do want to talk about when we were dealing with honeybees, and for those that are listening are likely to be beekeepers, uh, the wasps seem to be able to fly to a honeybee landing board when it's only 40 degrees in the morning, and they scoot right in. The bees are still clustered inside. We don't have any guards on the landing board. What is it about a wasp that allows it to fly cold like that? Or why would they be foraging in the cold at the end of the year? And because this is when they start to gain entry into a colony of bees, and then we've got a problem. Please explain, if you know, why they fly cold. And the other thing is, what are they after when they get inside the hive at the end of the year? So we're talking about coming up in the next couple of weeks. People are about to see a lot of this activity.
Well, I mean, I think that this is to the best of my knowledge, they're just able to vibrate their flight muscles to an extent that they can take flight, right? That they're warm enough for their muscles to work. I have yellow jackets in my colonies all the time, and I consider it not a big deal at all. Usually they're after nectar, a larger scale attack, which I mean, on one hand, I could count the number of times that something like that has happened, and it was in the case of extremely weak mating nukes that I just had after an experiment or something. They'll go after the brood. But strong colonies, it's very unlikely for them to sustain significant damage from yellow jackets. I have lots of yellow jackets around me. They're around in the apiary. I also find bumblebees in all the time in my colonies.
Well, I
And
usually find them dead.
no, I have living ones in there
We
regularly.
find them dead on the bottom once they get
Yeah,
in
and
because we're watching
carpenter
the don't.
bees too.
Okay.
But they're like a very minor nuisance, and certainly restricting the entrance is going to help it be more defensible. But the honeybees are easily able to um, defend themselves against a yellow jacket.
In Washington State, the losses to yellow jacket predation are actually pretty high in beekeepers.
Right. Well,
So,
it may
yeah,
be situational and also species driven.
yeah. And there's a new player in the game here, the yellow-legged. Is it a yellow-legged hornet or a yellow-legged wasp?
They're yellow-legged hornets. They're a Vespa species. They're true hornets.
So what can you tell us about those, Michael?
They're native to Asia. They were introduced to Europe about a decade ago, and they've been spreading over there. So we've kind of expected they might show up here. And then they popped up in Georgia last year. They eliminated 3 nests in Georgia. I have not looked to see if they found any more this year, but I suspect that they're looking for them and will eliminate them when they find them. They're not as big as the northern giant hornets, the quote unquote murder hornets that scare people so bad. They're honestly not much bigger than bald-faced hornets. The problem is the nest sizes get large. They'll get 1,000 workers in a nest. And like the bald-faced hornets, they build kind of big aerial nests that are covered in a paper covering. And so, when a nest is up at the top of a tree, 30, 60, 100 feet away, it can be difficult to distinguish them from bald-faced hornet nests because they're about the same size and shape, which might be part of the reason that they may have gone undetected here because people would just confuse them for our native species. There are reports of them being very damaging to honeybee colonies in France. They probably act similar here, but with only being here so recently, we don't really know what the impact is going to be. We also don't know where they're going to go. What climate models there are show them not quite reaching Pennsylvania because it's too cold here. So even if they get into the Southeast, I mean, they are in the Southeast. If they're not eliminated, if they spread, they still might not make it here and be an issue in Pennsylvania, at least. It may be a regional issue.
And I understand they practice this behavior called hawking, where they hover in front of the hive and incoming bees just get nabbed right out of the air. Are they killing the bees so they can access the hive, or are they actually utilizing the thorax of the bees as protein?
So they're different from some other from some other wasps that will say attack a beehive, kill the workers, and then go in for the brood. The hawking, they're going after the thorax. So they'll hawk at beehives, but they'll also hawk over flowers. They're really just going after, bee-sized insects that are attracted to flowers. They'll go after other wasps. They'll take flies. It's just a beehive is a really convenient place for them to go get the kind of prey that they are going after in other situations.
Kate, did you have anything to add?
Oh, no. I was just actually wanted to ask Michael, is their natural climate more of a Mediterranean climate, or are they known to be in more temperate areas?
I'd have to look. They're in Southeast Asia natively. They're in France. I think they've picked them up in southern Germany as well. They haven't picked them up in more northern areas of Europe. And Europe is typically somewhat warmer than, adjacent or the same latitude as North America. So France is going to be warmer than Pennsylvania. But again, they haven't made it into those more northern areas. And that doesn't mean that they can't. We just, based on current climate models, they probably can't get to Pennsylvania, but also the climate's shifting. So maybe that'll change in 10 or 20 years.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. For example, we had a mild winter here last winter, which is why I think we have so many wasps now that survived winter. More queens made it through, right? But we don't, of course, don't really have a way of assessing those numbers other than observant, people that are in their backyards and things, right?
So for overwintering queens like that, the mildness of the winter doesn't really matter that much.
Oh, it doesn't. Okay.
Oftentimes, so they get into protected places behind your siding, but like under the bark of fallen trees and whatnot, where temperatures are buffered. And they also produce antifreezants in their hemolymph, their insect equivalent of blood, so they can withstand sub-freezing temperatures. And so they just go to sleep. And unless it gets like -30 consistently for multiple days in a row, any fluctuations above that aren't really going to matter that much. The problem is going to be for these wasps if it is really warm and they wake up early and then there's no food. That actually might kill more of them because there's just no food resources and they starve. The other issue you can have is if you have a lot of warm and then cold spells in the spring. So it warms up to 60 in January for a couple days and then plummets. And you get another one of those in February, a couple in March. Those kind of spikes and then dips again. The wasps will wake up, either not have food resources and starve, or not be able to produce those antifreezant compounds quickly after the temperature falls again. And so if you get a bunch of those kind of ups and downs, that can also knock the population back. But if we get a consistently cold or kind of a consistent, even if it's somewhat warm, as long as the temperatures aren't getting really high and then plummeting again, if it stays in the 40s, you may not you probably won't see much change in the population because they're just staying asleep.
Mhm. So is there, at what temperature would it be lethal for the queen?
Cold wise,
Yeah, because
uh,
we have those data on bees, like we know when they go to a coma,
yeah,
chill coma, and then at what point that becomes chill death. So,
I don't know. I suspect nobody's looked.
okay.
Um, but I don't. I'd have to dig into the literature.
Could you, do you think, keep them in an observation hive?
Yellow jackets, sure. If you can
Sure.
get the queen to make the nest in there, I tried a couple times, and often what happens is they either just won't build a nest or they'll start and then you kind of open it up for them to go outside and they're like, I don't like this spot. I'm going to go somewhere else. And they never come
Oh,
back.
okay.
You
I
can
did. Oh, go
keep them
ahead.
in, oh, you can keep them in captivity a little bit. Researchers, we had a postdoc in another lab studying those brown wasps.
Yeah, I
And
did
you
that.
can, yeah, collect the queens in the spring and have
Mhm.
them start a nest in a screened cage, and they eat like the same food that many captured wild animals eat, and that is cat food.
No, is that
Oh,
It's
that's
right?
cool.
canned cat food.
I'm gonna write that down. Well, because I do collect, those are the, I call them paper wasps. They're the kind of brown and
Yeah,
orange with the long, slender waist. They're super passive,
yeah.
and
Mhm.
I take them and I relocate them and I use hot glue to stick them up in a little three-sided shelter on the side of a building, and just to see if I can get them going. And they're very manageable. So I was thinking that maybe what is the term? I call them galleries when they start to make these little levels as they go down when they're building that. What are they called? What's each level actually? What should we be calling that?
They're combs.
It's just it's common, but
Yep.
like there's a distinctive, then there's the next level and a
Mhm.
bigger one and next level. But it should we just say
Yeah, they're just
would
combs.
galleries be a good term then? Or is that no?
Um, I'm not sure I would have
Because
used it
just to say that
or
they're
that I've seen it.
combs, we need something more creative and descriptive than just to say comb.
I think the
So,
word gallery is used for the carpenter bee nest, which
Mhm.
hmm.
snagged.
Because that's in the tube and they do one after another. So those are galleries.
Well, there's little rooms that shoot off. The carpenter bee nest is not just straight. It has little rooms, branches.
I'm just going to call it. I don't like carpenter bees. There, I said it.
You
They
should bring me
chew
back to talk about carpenter bees.
they chew right into the side of a beehive, like somebody went up with a drill bit, and then when they realize it went all the way into the beehive, they just leave and now have another entrance to deal with. I'm not excited about carpenter bees. So tell me that while we're on that, we don't have to stick to just wasps because Michael's aware of these things too. What are the benefits of the carpenter bee while we're at it?
Well, first of all, carpenter bees are so much more fascinating than you ever realized. They're not exactly solitary bees. So they
Oh,
will live in loose, semi-social groups, right? So social insects do these things where they live together and they take care for offspring that aren't their own. Um, so carpenter bees don't just live 1 year. They can live several years, and their nests are so valuable that when there's a housing shortage, um, they will stay in the nest that they were born in and wait for the current queen to die and then take over the nest. So while these are called, I think it's called the primary queen or the prime queen is the reproductive one. Her and maybe her sisters or her daughters, some of them may stay in the nest and wait for her to run out of gas. So when they're foraging, the reproductive queens live about a year and their body wears out and they're done. But her daughter or sister may wait for her to die to inherit the nest, and then she'll activate her ovaries and become the prime queen. So
Did you know that, Michael? Is this new?
No, that's cool.
yeah, so I mean, sometimes they're solitary and sometimes they're not. But the reason it's hard to deter them from somewhere they've already nested is those nests are so valuable that they're willing to wait a year or even 2 years to inherit a nest.
Not good. Okay. So we're
They
talking
al-
about generational wealth now among carpenter bees.
yeah, they
Okay.
also have great facial and kin recognition of each other. So
What?
the non-reproductive inhabitants can help defend the nest. And very interestingly, they emerge late in the summer and forage and overwinter as adults, both the females and males, but they don't mate until the following spring, which is a very interesting reproductive strategy. And unlike many other bees who emerge, mate, and then the males die,
Now,
and the queens overwinter.
do you grab the males out of the air just to impress your friends? No.
And another great thing is the males have really fancy mustaches.
Mustaches, not just the yellow
Well, they have the kind
mark.
of grill on the front of their face, and a lot of male bees, not honeybees, but a lot of male bees have mustaches. Osmia, leaf cutting bees, and male bumblebees. They have light markings on the front of their face.
Are any of them coming out this time of year, or have we missed that?
The male bumblebees are out. You should be able to
What
find
about
them.
the male carpenter bees,
Oh,
though?
yes, they should be emerging soon.
Oh, so they're doing another round of
Well,
chewing
no,
up our sheds and stuff.
their mom laid them as an egg and then they grew up and they emerge as an adult late in the summer. And then they go out and forage and eat food and then overwinter and then mate the following spring because that's when are the male carpenter bees annoying, in April and May.
Okay. I'm gonna try to be happy about them. All right. If you don't paint the wood on your buildings, they're gonna be drilling right in. So old nests that they don't reuse. This is back to yellow jackets now. So these are the exposed nests. Um, we know that they don't reuse the nest. Does that nest serve as a deterrent the following year to keep bees or wasps from making a new nest in the same area?
Nope, absolutely not. It's the same reason that you see on Facebook, oh, blow up a brown paper bag and wasps think it's a
People
nest.
sell those.
I
We're ruining someone's market right now. Say
No,
goodbye to Etsy, you
those don't
fakers.
work either.
Okay. Okay. So by keeping the nest like this right here, if I hung that on my porch, it'd just be a new nest right next to it.
Yeah, they don't care. If anything, they'll harvest paper from the old nest and reuse it. So you're providing them with a resource.
I am so glad we're having this conversation. You agree, Kate? Anything?
Oh yeah, no, I mean it won't work, but they are look really cool. I bought some
Could,
of those, like they look like paper lanterns just
yeah,
because I thought they were charming
yeah.
decorations.
Do they avoid other wasp species? Like when they're setting up a nest, if there's another wasp around, would they recognize it and avoid that area? Could we put a miniature Vespa mandarinia up there and they would like murder hornet and they would not build there?
No, I
No.
think
Has
the
that been
only
tested
way
or okay.
you just need your favorite one and you should bolster their population and then they will keep the others away by using them as food.
I have actually done that. I have put those I put the paper wasp nest in the bee yard to drive out yellow jackets. It almost worked. Okay. All right. Oh, do they eat mosquitoes? Yellow jackets? Do they collect them?
I mean, yellow jackets are generalist predators. They'll tackle and consume anything they can overpower. There's lots of photos of them, taking out housefly sized insects. Bald-faced hornets will take out yellow jacket sized insects. Uh, if they could catch a mosquito, they would consume it. But there are day flying mosquitoes like Asian tiger mosquitoes that are a nuisance. But my sense is that you'd never have enough paper or enough yellow jackets in an area to really make a dent. And there's probably other bigger, more tasty prey out there anyhow. They'd rather get a fly that is packed full of protein because of its size than a little dinky mosquito that isn't going to feed them very much.
Okay, well, there goes my, see, I'm trying to get people to care about the wasp and you're not helping. So if they could take out mosquitoes, that would be. Tell me more about the Asian tiger mosquito.
It's an invasive that first popped up in Texas in the 1980s, I want to say, from Asia. They're a container breeder, so they probably came over in old tires. And that's part of the reason that they've spread throughout most of the Southeast. They breed in old tires, garbage, stuff lying on the side of the road, any kind of small container. Uh, they they've made it to southeastern Pennsylvania. With climate change, they'll probably make it across most of the state. The problem with them is they're nuisance day biters, so they'll get you at noon, 1, 2, anytime in the afternoon. Um, when people aren't expecting mosquitoes to come bite them. It's a painful bite for their size, and they are vectors of things like dengue, which isn't found in North America, but if we have a local dengue outbreak, they can be a problem. There's some other things that they can vector as well that can be an issue here, but mostly they're just annoying biters.
Can you give me a sense of the size of it? Is it distinctive in some way? When we'd see it, we would know it's different from other
They're
mosquitoes?
they're bigger than many other mosquitoes, not by much, but big enough if you put them side by side with some of the other smaller species, maybe another half as big.
Wow.
The distinctive thing about them is they're jet black with really bright white markings, especially on their legs, hence the name tiger mosquito. Like once you've seen them, they're hard to mistake for other mosquitoes in the same area. Um, yeah, combine color and pattern with when they're biting you, it's pretty easy to recognize.
And they're day biters. So now what makes their bite more painful than others? Do they not anesthetize the entry wound the way, because the other mosquitoes spit on us or something, right? So,
Yeah, I'm not sure.
oh, you don't know.
Mm-mm.
So Michael doesn't know.
You've
Okay,
reached
all
the
right.
limit of my Asian tiger mosquito knowledge.
Okay. Well, you said they hurt more. So if something really
They do.
hurts,
When I lived in Arkansas, we had them around the house, and it's like when you're bit. Like other mosquitoes, they bite you and fly off, and you're like,
yeah, they sneak
the
up on you,
well.
then you're itching. Yeah.
Yeah, but tiger mosquitoes, they as soon as they bite you, it's um, you know, it's an experience. It's not the worst pain ever, but certainly noticeable.
I wonder what it is about them that makes them a day biter. Nighttime seems to favor the mosquito because they're just sensing their prey, right? Or the blood source. So in the daytime, what's the benefit? You don't know.
I don't know. They're large mammal biters, so it might just be that they're going after things like, cows and other bovines where they're from,
Okay.
water buffalo, that are more active in the day.
Okay, so at the end of the year, back to the yellow jackets, they're gonna eat nothing but nectar. Is that right? End of the year, because they're not doing broods. The adults don't eat the animal protein, so then they're just after the nectar. Is that right?
Oh, no, they're still rear and brood till the bitter end, as far as I know.
They rear brood right up until it gets so cold that it just kills them.
Well,
Yeah,
Like,
in the South, which I should also qualify, my experience that of beekeeping in yellow jackets is very specific to my work in Pennsylvania and in
okay,
central Pennsylvania. But
okay,
yellow jackets will live all year in the South where it's warm. They're not
right,
they're
right.
not so I think that they just keep going until they can't go anymore.
Okay,
yeah, and
that's interesting.
it's a couple species in particular, um, Vespula vulgaris, that make those multi-annual nests that, in most cases they die, but if you're in southern Louisiana, maybe you get a couple warm winters. And I've seen some photos of these things. They'll take over like an entire car because,
Yeah,
the nest doesn't die out and they just keep adding to it. They get
yeah,
gigantic.
yeah. I've seen that with all the furniture fully engulfed in the paper
Hmm.
nests and everything.
Yeah, that's what happens is, they're normally an annual species, but like Kate said, you get some extenuating circumstances, especially in the South.
Mhm.
And they just keep going until some cold snap kills them.
Now, have you traveled and looked at some of these mammoth nest structures before?
No, I haven't seen them in person.
Kate? No?
No,
So
but
it's
I
just
have
so,
watched some amazing YouTube videos.
yeah, YouTube is definitely the place to learn things for sure, which is what people are watching this on right now. But they're also listening, for those who may not know, this is a podcast, and Podbean, the whole series, interviews with experts, as it's obvious now with Michael and Kate that we have experts here with us today, even though we don't know everything about everything. Okay, moving on. Night hunting. Some wasp species can hunt at night. Is that correct? Can you
European
name?
hornets are nocturnal species. They're the only nocturnal wasp in the area, the only nocturnal vespid in the area. But yeah, one of the major complaints that I get from clients with European hornets is these wasps are around my light at night. Why are they there and
Oh,
how do I
sure,
get
because
rid
they're
of
after
them?
the food, the other bugs that are
Yeah, they're after the
attracted to the
other
light.
insects that are attracted to the lights. That's a really easy one. I tell clients just turn your porch light off and they'll go away, which
Okay.
never seems to occur to them before I tell them that.
So
Uh,
do they have good vision, like in low light? Can they actually see really well?
mhm.
Now, if
It's
I do,
also
go
it's a
ahead.
problem with controlling them too, because with a lot of other yellow jackets, we tell people like if you're gonna control the yellow jacket nest, go out at night because they can't see as well. You're less likely to be stung. That is not true with European hornets. They can see almost as well as they can in daylight, especially if it's like a full moon and if it's a new moon and there's absolutely no light out, then they're going to struggle. But if there's a lot of starlight, moonlight, they can see very well. Um, and that can be an issue if you're trying to eliminate the nest. So,
Yeah, so we're getting together and the three of us, and we're going to go out and visit a European hornet nest in the middle of the night. What should our flashlights be covered with? Do they pay attention to red light at all, or are we just doomed? Are they just going to see us coming and come and get us no matter what? What kind of light could we bring where we could see, but they wouldn't necessarily be aware of us?
I think I'm pretty sure they also can't see red light the same way as bees could, or they won't see as well.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure on that, but I know it's true of multiple
Okay.
species of bees and ants. And there is a specific wavelength, which I do not have memorized, but is Googleable, and you can buy red lights in that specific wavelength
Oh,
or in the
there.
range of you can buy a red LED bulb.
Okay, so
Um,
there is a red light that would bees also not see it?
Yeah, we use it in the lab all the time. And I have
Okay.
some red Christmas lights actually that we use in a room that we keep bumblebee colonies in.
We are not wearing Christmas lights outside. But if you can find the information about this red light spectrum, that there is a light kind of designated that's within that, if you would give that to me, we'll provide that to viewers and listeners down in the video description. That would be fantastic.
Sure.
yeah.
I will buy that yesterday. Just take my money. I'm just
And
gonna.
I think I know one of the grad students was using a red headlamp, like, a regular flashlight one, but a red one when she was doing some nighttime bee work.
Mhm.
Um, so red light is your friend.
Which, for the record, listeners, beekeepers, we are not recommending you get into your beehives at night. They will be climbing all over your legs. They will be all over you, even though they can't see you. And give the white lights to your best friend. So, okay. All right. So we're getting some good stuff here. Nighttime. Oh, so another thing I want to settle. Can they spritz venom into the air? Like, can they spray venom at your eyes or something? I read that about the bald-faced hornets could do that. Is that anything you know about?
I think that's true, Michael.
Yeah,
I've
Michael.
never heard
Wait,
that. So if it is
oh,
true, that's something new to me.
maybe it's just another old wives' tale that I thought was fact.
Okay, well, We need it. We need an answer on that for sure, because I've said it in the past when I was visiting bald-faced hornet nests at night, as they can spray venom in your eyes. So I needed Michael to validate that, and he failed. So let's move on.
Well, I believe that it is true.
Oh, did you just look it up? Did you Google
Yeah,
it?
well, I just Googled it, but let me get a cited source. We'll follow up with this shortly.
Okay. So what is the most beneficial wasp species in the state of Pennsylvania, and what makes it beneficial to us?
If we're talking just the vespids, just the social wasps like we have been, I'd go with uh, either bald-faced hornets or the paper wasps, just because they're such good biocontrol of caterpillars and other insects. They're not as defensive as, say, yellow jackets, especially when the nests are up and in a spot where you don't disturb them. They're really not that defensive when they're away from the nests. I love seeing paper wasps around, so I would probably go with those, but I have a
Okay.
bias. I like paper wasps, so
So they are great pest control, you would say.
they are. Yeah.
Okay. And what pests are they controlling? I have to ask that.
Paper wasps are caterpillar specialists.
Okay,
So,
so soft body.
but not even soft body, just caterpillars.
Yeah.
Um, and if you have a home garden or ornamentals, caterpillars are some of the herbivores that are really going after those kind of plants. So if you can have some help keeping the caterpillars off,
Now, what about caterpillars like for the monarch butterfly and things like that? Are they not interested in those? Or do they also predate on those?
they will predate monarchs as well. Yellow jackets are one of the big predators of monarch caterpillars. Something like 1 out of 100 eggs for monarchs goes from egg to adult, so they have a really high mortality rate.
Right.
European paper wasps are actually they're an introduced species from Europe, as you might have guessed from the name. They're one of the biggest mortality factors for monarch butterflies in areas that they occur. Um, they also displace native paper wasp species in some situations. So they, I love paper wasps, but I should couch that in I love native paper wasp species because they're doing what they should be doing. European paper wasps, I kill them whenever I see them because they're invasive and not playing well with others.
So are we telling listeners to kill European paper wasps?
I do.
Okay.
It it
Okay, I'll trust you.
they're well established, so it doesn't really make much of a difference. Um, you could kill everyone you found in your entire life, and it would never,
They'll
it
just bounce
wouldn't
back.
dent the population, but it makes me feel better.
I would
Okay.
like to add though, and we're actually working with one of the extension educators for pest control about updating some pest management practices.
Hmm.
There are a number of ways to go about removing unwanted nests, right? And I feel like reaching for the can of Raid, we need to, you know, A, it costs money. B, it's, leaching into non-target insects going to the ground.
Mhm.
Do you know what kills insects really well? Soapy water or just the garden hose. So, yeah, exactly, John. But
Dawn
just,
Ultra Free and Clear specifically because it's biodegradable and does not mess up the environment. Okay, go ahead.
and if you have a little a pressure washer, even that'll, you can just get the nests down that are above your doorway, right? Get them while they're small. There's no, there's no need to pour gasoline into the ground.
Thank you for saying
Please
that. That is the
don't
number
do that.
one recommendation I hear from people.
Please don't do that. And if you have a huge nest and it's not really somewhere that's getting a lot of traffic, you might be putting yourself in greater danger by trying to kill the wasps than if you just waited till we got a good hard freeze and they died.
Right. Mhm.
That's, of course, like people should not endanger themselves or their pets or whatever, but just because there's nesting wasp there, they don't need to die.
Right.
A lot of times they're doing something beneficial. Yeah, you know, you're going to do a much more disservice to your environment by polluting it with gasoline and
Mhm.
pesticides that are leaching and then being part of the supply chain than yellow jackets killing a couple of your individual honeybees and bothering you, right?
Well, the other thing, just for the beekeepers out there, uh, your bees at the end of the year are pushing out, they're even pulling pupa of drones and they're pushing them out on landing boards early in the morning. I recommend getting up at sunrise and going to see what's taking those away. And you'll find wasps were taking those away. Well, those are cast-offs anyway. They were going to discard them. They're just, the cleanup crew. So I don't see that as a big deal. But I am glad you mentioned, we don't want to put gasoline in the ground and definitely don't light it for those of you who love to recommend that. Um, Also, it persists in the soil for a long time. And if I'm on a well, I don't want it in my ground. So I'm
The
glad you
other
touched on that. Go ahead, Michael.
Oh, just the other thing to say about fire too is people love to burn bald-faced hornet nests, or caterpillar, webbing nests or whatever. Don't burn nests that are up in trees. Like
You'll
you
light the
do
tree
more
on fire.
damage to the tree with fire than the caterpillars or the wasps do. It's just don't ever use fire for pest control, but you know, you're doing more damage to whatever is around it than you are getting control.
So now Kate said soapy water to defeat the cuticle and get those spiracles, drowning them out, right? What's your recommendation, Michael? If they had a nest, they have to get rid of it.
Soapy water works well. I guess I have recommended wasp and hornet spray in some situations. I like everything else, it is situational. In most cases, I try to leave nests. If I can't leave the nest, I will try to take it out with some non-chemical mean. If it's a paper wasp nest and I can just knock it down with like a yardstick, I'll go for that. If I can hit it with the hose, I'll do that. If it's a bigger nest and I can get, say, a trash bag around it
Hmm.
at night, I'll put a trash bag around, knock it into the bag, tie it up. The wasps
Hmm.
can't get out. You're great. If it's something though, like a yellow jacket nest where I've got to dig it up at night and the act of digging it up has stirred those yellow jackets up, uh, I'll usually spray it with wasp and hornet spray because it's got such a fast knockdown. The negatives of the insecticide spray, which you try to limit, use as little as possible so you don't contaminate. Try to hit the nest with it directly so you're not getting it into the soil. The negatives are outweighed by the benefits of not being stung. Um, so, I think there is a place for it, but I think you need to be sparing in its use and try to use like it's it's the basics of integrated pest management. Use everything, like that is the last step that you use
Right.
when there is
Final
nothing
option.
else,
Yeah.
yeah, that works in that situation. So I think it has a role, but I think people definitely overuse it. And I don't want to give the idea of you've got permission to use it, so you should use it all the time. Like that's,
Hmm.
there is a time and place, and it is not every time and place.
Right. Great
Well
advice.
said.
Great advice. So when we're looking at because a lot of people will be discovering these in-ground yellow jacket nests this time of year, how near to the entrance is the main nest? Like, are they just right in there? Is there a series of little cubby holes underground? How far away? Are there multiple entrances? Generally, what is the architecture there?
I
Do we
think
know?
it's pretty varied. So, I think that the wasps like to find a cavity that already exists and they'll expand it, and it depends on their population size. But I think the shape underground varies depending on both their population and probably your landscape. I know that where I live, that if I want to dig a hole, I get a pry bar and I pry a boulder out of the ground. So I imagine that the yellow jacket nests are going to be shaped in a way that just it's not going to be perfectly, oval or round. It's going to be, around the various rocks under the ground.
Mhm.
So there'll be a lot of variation, and they usually have a second entrance that I've
Okay.
noticed.
And they're very good excavators because I've watched them coming out with, holding bits of dirt and stuff in their mandibles, just flying away rapidly. How quickly could they, like some people, if you just dumped a pile of dirt on it, how quickly would they re-excavate and just be out again?
Hours
Just
or
hours. Okay.
minutes.
Yeah.
Within a day at the latest.
Yeah.
Within a day. So that's doing nothing. Other people recommend hot water. Some people say put dry ice on it. For those who just happen to have a bunch of dry ice around, which I never have, but do you know anything about why that works or if it does?
Well, the it's CO2, so that is going to work in the same way that it works for honeybees, that it
Mhm.
makes them pass out unconscious.
Okay.
Um,
But then you'd have to get them before that wears
well,
off and they're
right.
breeding.
I mean, I guess if you think you can actually appreciably freeze all of their brood and freeze them hard enough to die, but I'm gonna call that is not that likely. You
Yeah, you'd
probably
rather
will.
liquid nitrogen over that, right? You would want to hit them with some liquid nitrogen
Even
before
that
they
would
breed.
take a lot of liquid nitrogen because you'd have to fill the whole cavity, and the the ground would transfer a lot of energy into that liquid nitrogen. So
Mhm.
I think, I mean, it would take a lot of liquid nitrogen to freeze that large of an area.
So this is really good, Kate, because we're saving people a lot of money. Those who have gone to the ice cream supply places and want to buy a block of, we're answering these questions so that people know that the cheapest solution is often the best. And so what else can we talk about? Michael, has there been a species presented to you that you did not know? Have you found something new when someone submitted for identification? Do you have something named after you?
So not through, I have not gotten anything that is new through the ID lab, but historically, classically, I'm trained as a taxonomist. I did my master's work on this group of mites that live in forest leaf litter called Cunaxidae. They're generalist predators that run around and eat, whatever tiny mites they can overpower. I got between 30 and 35 species that I found in Arkansas. Of those, only 5 had been described. So, like, there was, I had my work cut out. I didn't describe everything that was new because I ran out of time during my degree. I described what I could and kind of moved on with life. And there's probably 20 species that I know of sitting on slides undescribed because there are only 3 other people that are experts in Cunaxidae worldwide, and I'm one of them, and I don't work on them anymore. Um,
So you got
so
your degree and then
yeah,
just walked away from potentially having mites named after you.
so yes, because there are no jobs for mite taxonomists out there. Nobody wants to pay me. That said, I have 2 species named after me. One's a Cunaxid that a guy
Can you spell
over,
Cunaxid? I'm
yeah,
sorry.
Cunaxidae. Um, there's a guy in Russia that named one after me, a Cunaxid, and there was a water mite that a buddy of mine at University of Arkansas named after me because I collected the specimens for him that he described that species off of. So it actually came out of a stream here in Pennsylvania.
So where do you collect a water mite? Are they in the sedentary or in the humus at the bottom somewhere? And how did you go about collecting them? With
It
a straw
depends.
or
Yeah, it depends on the species. There's lotic and lentic, so flowing water and still water species. My buddy Ray, who was doing the work, was working on mites that live in riffles in streams. So you go to a riffle, put your net kind of in the substrate, and then go upstream of it and
wait a
dig in
second,
this. Yeah.
I hate to interrupt, a riffle. Kate, did you already
So
know that term? A riffle? I need
No,
to know
but
what
I
a
like
riffle is.
it. Tell us
Okay.
what a riffle is, Michael.
Yeah.
oh gosh. this is getting into stuff that I'm not super familiar with. In streams, you have runs, riffles, pools, and glides. And riffles are the part where you've got a lot of water flowing over an area that's kind of rocky. So you get like a lot of, kind of turbulence right there. Um, Pools are big pools. Runs and glides, I don't remember. So you go to a part of a stream where you get a rocky area, it's kind of shallow, lots of turbulent water moving over it. Put your net in the water, go upstream of it, and dig into the substrate with a shovel. And the mites are down in the rocks, in the substrate. They're not suspended in the water, but when you dig in there with a shovel, you suspend them in the water and they flow down into your net. You take everything that's collected in that net, dump it into, we used photograph development trays because they're the right size and nice and plastic and hard to break. Put them in there, and then after an hour or two, the mites crawl out of the substrate and you can pick them out of the water from like the edges of the tray. So I grew up outside of Pittsburgh. I was here visiting family over the summer. Ray was doing this water mite project. He had stuff all from the Ozarks where we were. And I said, just give me a net. I'll grab some stuff when I go home to get you some more like samples that you don't get. And I got a whole bunch of species that he didn't find down in the Ozarks because I was just happened to be here visiting and took a day to go sample. So he named one of those after me.
That's outstanding. And so what's it named? What's it called?
Torrenticola skvarla.
I knew that's what you were going to say even before you said it. I knew that was it. Okay. So we're going to have to wrap this up, you guys. And I want you each to describe a behavior you've seen in an animal. And I need to know something that blew your mind a little bit. It was just phenomenal. Some behavior that it was doing, some way that it was surviving that really impressed you and stuck. Do you have anything just right at the top of your head?
Well, back to wasps, I don't know how long ago it was that I learned that the adult wasps will feed the larvae who have teeth, but the larvae ask to be fed by scraping their fangs
On the side of
the comb.
Yeah.
And the adults then are rewarded because the larva will feed them back some delicious treat they've partially digested, which incentivizes the adults to forage for the young because they're also rewarded for their effort.
That is not a nice sound, by the way. That scratching sound that they make when there's a whole bunch of them, not an ASMR candidate at all. But but that's a great story. You're right. That is an amazing behavior. Michael, what have you come up with?
So I think the one that I'm most intrigued with right now, some of the research I'm doing is on Deer Keds. So if people haven't heard of them, they're these biting flies that get on deer, but they bite people, so that's a problem. And so we've been doing some work on them, trying to figure out if they're blood feeders. We want to know if they're pathogen vectors. They fly to a host, a deer typically, and they shed their wings, and they crawl through the fur like a tick and blood feed, but they're flies. And the neat thing about these deer keds is that unlike many other insects where, most insects lay a lot of eggs, very few of those eggs make it through to development into adults. So monarch butterflies are a good example. 1 in 100 eggs survives to adulthood. Mother keds are really good mothers. So she keeps one egg internally. That egg hatches. She keeps the larva inside of her internal in a kind of fly uterus, and they have internal development. It goes through all 3 larval life stages inside mom. She secretes a special milk that she feeds it. And then right as it is ready to turn into a pupa, she larvaposits it. She doesn't ovipods it, because it's not an egg, it's a larva. She larvapods this larva. It turns into a pupa and kind of rolls out of the hair of the deer and off into the leaf litter. And so they have a really slow development. They can pop one larva out a month. And so this makes the Keds really long lived. They can live at least a year, because we'll find them on deer up to a year later, and then more Keds come out. And so we don't know if they live more than a year. They might live 2, 3, 4 years if they can survive being groomed out by the deer. But it's weird to see insects that have this kind of internal larval development with like a insect uterus and insect milk. And so I think that's really cool because it's not something most other insects do.
And I'm thinking about the amount of work it takes to figure that out, that this is what's going on. I mean, so they shed the wings, so they're committed to that animal host forever.
Pretty much, they can transfer hosts with close contact. So does feeding fawns during mating. Okay. They'll get on hunters that have harvested a deer and like dragging it out of the woods, or butchers that are butchering deer. But it's got to be close contact. They have to crawl onto the other host.
How big is it? So if a hunter's out there and they feel something crawling on them the size of a pinhead, how big is this thing?
Size of a tick. They're fairly sizable. You can feel them crawling on you. I've got them in my hair. It's gross feeling.
So you felt them crawling on you.
Okay. The way we collect them is to go to deer processors and pick them off hunter harvested deer, which means we're like kneeling around dead deer all day, and they just crawl up you. And so I'll be driving home and like feel it scurry in my hair, and it is unnerving to say.
Yeah, you need to go through a delousing process when you get home or something. What does your wife do when you come back? Does she meet you in the yard and hose you down? I mean,
she makes me go take a shower though.
Okay.
They're big enough though, you can feel them, and so if you've got one on you.
That is a great story. I'm so glad you shared that. The feeling of it crawling on you, and it is very, very interesting. And I have to say that this is something I'm trying to get video of. So I want to get a mud dauber wasp in a spider web, because I watched one land in a spider web, nab the spider, and fly away with it. I need a video of that. And what is it about the mud dauber that gives it the ability? And they also favor the 2-dimensional nests over the like funnel shaped little 3-dimensional nests. Can you tell us more about that, or what do you? Because I've also cut away their little mud things and seen crab spiders all piled up in there.
It's like Halloween, but Christmas at the same time. Because you don't know what's going to be in there, because there's a number of
so have you cut them open
like
too?
mud daubers.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's one big spider, and then sometimes it's a pile of little spiders.
Yeah, it is. I can at least do that, but I want this behavior. Why is that mud dauber wasp like that, Michael?
Why are they going after spiders, or why can they?
Yeah, why are they spider specialists? They go after other things too, but it's this web thing that they can't get caught in the web. Is their cuticle so slippery? What's going on with them?
I don't know. Different mud daubers are specialized on different things. So some of them go after caterpillars, many go after spiders. My guess is that partially it's a learned behavior, because you'll crack open nests from the same species and there'll be different spiders. So insects can learn, and they'll specialize on a certain spider if they can find it, if it's common in the environment. So they, learn how to navigate the nest. I do wonder if they can figure out, in any spider web, they've got sticky strands and non-sticky strands, because the spider, if it touches its sticky strands, it will get caught too. So I wonder if they can figure out which ones are the non-sticky strands and just walk on those too.
Wow, I hadn't even thought of that.
I'd have to look into it. That does seem like somebody would have investigated though, because that is a cool behavior.
Yeah.
So I wonder if somebody's looked into it.
Okay.
We'll just have to set up a whole bunch of Raspberry Pi cameras continuously recording until there's
Until it
action.
happens. Yeah.
And then
No,
we'll have
I
to get
need
a
to.
grant for a student to write a computer program to analyze it.
That's that's where AI is going to help us identify where they're going and what they're doing. Um, and I just forgot what I was going to say. Darn it. Oh yeah, the Joro spider. What do we know?
Probably not going to be a big deal.
Unless you're afraid of spiders, because
Unless, so yes. So Jora spiders are going to be the biggest spider in our area, at least the biggest web building spider in our area. Um, that said, we've got a congeneric, so a species that's related in the same genus that lives down in Florida in the southeast. People down there, they've had them there for 100 plus years, 200 years. We're not entirely sure if they're native to Florida or not. This quote unquote native species. They've been there as long as Europeans have been looking, but it might be that they blew in. Anyway, people down there just live with them. Like, these giant spiders don't get out of their webs. They don't chase you down. They're big orb weavers, and down there people don't even give them a second glance. And
well,
so
I was told that the web material is very strong. It's like
it
five
is.
five test monofilament fishing line or
Yeah,
something.
it's really strong. But
Yeah.
once people here get used to it, it might be a nuisance if they build a web in a place you don't want them. But people are going to get used to it the way that people down in Florida are used to the golden orb weavers. Um, it
Okay.
we don't know how they're going to impact native insects. Obviously, they'll be catching insects and eating them. I guess it'll depend on how prevalent they are in the environment. I think my biggest concern is outcompeting the golden silk orb weavers down in the southeast where they co-occur, because one, they might hybridize, and so you've got issues with.
Wait, the spiders can hybridize?
They might, they're the same genus, they might be able to hybridize, so you might have issues with um you know Joro spider genetics polluting the native species. uh
Wow.
they also might just straight out outcompete them, which is bad. So I think my biggest concerns are for the native congeneric species we have, not so much on effects to human populations, because the bite's not medically important.
Right.
They're big
It's just a
spiders,
fear.
but they
It's
don't
a
leave their
fear
webs.
factor,
Yeah,
right? It's just,
yeah.
yeah.
Um, they did find a population in Maryland, which is much further north and much sooner than I was expecting. Almost certainly brought there via human mediated transport,
And
spider
when
got in
was
a
that?
car.
When did
They
they
found
find them?
those, there was reports of that on iNaturalist last year.
Okay.
I haven't seen if there are new reports this year, but they're probably popping up now if they're there.
And for those listening or watching that don't understand what was just said, iNaturalist is an app that you can put on your phone and you can photograph a species and people will get back to you pretty quickly and help you identify what that is. So closing statements, I want to thank you both for joining me for this conversation today. I hope that beekeepers are getting a broader appreciation for what's going on in the environment around our apiaries and that we should not be just about the bees, but considering all the other wildlife, and we don't necessarily have to kill it. We just need strong colonies. What closing statement do you have, Kate, if anything?
Oh, well, I hope that people take the time to go out and check out the behaviors of some of these social wasps, because a lot of the things that you love about your honeybees, the social wasps are doing them and slightly different versions of them. And it's really fascinating to watch.
Mhm. Fantastic. Michael?
I think mine's similar. Especially we vilify wasps in other stinging insects, but really most of the time they're not being pests. We don't like being stung, and so there are times, a wasp nest is over a busy doorway. We need to eliminate it just to reduce the risk of stings, but 95% of the time we can let them go and they'll just go about doing their thing, and they're not going to be pests that sting us. So recognizing when things are pests and when they're not, and realizing that most of the time, even things that can sting us aren't pests. I think that kind of change in worldview can be really helpful.
Great. Excellent. Thank you both so much. And that wraps up another episode of Interviews with Experts. I want to thank you for watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast, The Way to Be. Please take a moment to visit the video description and learn more about my guests, Kate Anton and Dr. Michael Skvarla. I'm Frederick Dunn, and this has been The Way to Be.